In this video, I'll give you my top tips on how to survive your first on-call shift as an F1 doctor. Hello, my name is Roberta Barreto. I'm an emergency doctor and dancer. I completed both my medical school training and foundation training in the UK. So what does an on-call shift look like? Every on-call shift will be different, so this is only a brief overview. You will always start your day with a handover with the night team, so make sure you do know where this takes place before your shift. And it's very important not to be late so the night team can go home on time. You then have your ward round, and hopefully the day team on various wards would have collated a decent patient list for you to follow. You'll then be completing ward jobs very similar to your day-to-day ward work. You'll also be clerking new patients. In most hospitals, as an F1 doctor, you'll most likely be clerking patients that are referred from the GPs. After you've clerked your patients, they'll have to be post-taked by a senior member of the team, so usually either the middle grade doctor on call or the consultant. Then again, you would complete ward jobs after the post-take ward rounds. And finally, you'll end your shift with another handover with the night team, where you'll hand over any patients waiting to be seen and any outstanding jobs that you need them to complete overnight. And then it's home time. Tip number 1. Look after yourself. In order to prepare well for your shift, make sure you sleep well the day before. 12 hours is a long time to work, and you want to make sure your mind stays sharp for the duration of your shift. And make sure you eat well, stay hydrated, and exercise. When your body feels better, your brain will also work better. Now, it's very easy to miss your break, especially when you're busy, and it's easy to lose track of time as well. Your adrenaline level is going to run higher than your normal day job. You might not even feel hungry. But just remember, you're more likely to make mistakes when you're tired, so make sure you take your breaks. Tip number 2. Be prepared for your ward rounds. Now this part is actually very similar to your day-to-day ward jobs. I've actually made a video about how to thrive on the wards as an F1 doctor, so feel free to check that out. The only difference is you'll also be responsible for patients that are not usually under your care, so make sure you print out all the ward lists. Your job as the foundation doctor is to make sure the consultant reviews all the patients that the day teams have requested daily reviews for, and any patients that the nursing staff are worried about. And usually that will be highlighted by the nursing staff on the respective wards. Tip number 3. Master the art of clerking patients. To make your life a lot easier, make sure you're familiar with the clerking proforma. Each specialty will have a different clerking paperwork, and this can also vary from hospital to hospital. There usually are a lot of boxes to fill in, many pages to flip through, so it will be easier if you can flip through those pages before you're on call. And for any patients you've seen during your on call, make sure you grab a patient sticky from their notes or just jot down their important details. So this would be very similar to your normal ward list. Make sure you include the patient name, their date of birth, their hospital number, their important clinical details, and any outstanding jobs you need to do. Most of us will keep a paper list of all the patients we've seen because we won't always have access to a computer to update the list. The only downside of a paper list is it's really easy to lose them, so make sure you hang on to them and don't leave them in patients' notes. Too many of us have made that mistake, so just don't do it. It'll save yourself some panic time looking for the lists. Now, most hospitals will have an electronic record of the patient's past history and previous lab results or scan results, so make sure you have a glance at them either before or after you clerk your patients. The reason I say this is patients may not always be aware of their records, and then make sure you don't miss a thing. If your shift isn't so busy, and if you have a spare moment, fingers crossed, make sure you give your SHO and your registrar a hand with clerking patients. Don't forget, you work as a team. Tip number 4. Make sure you answer your bleeps and calls. This might be an obvious one, but most of your bleeps as an F1 doctor would usually come from the nurses on the wards. Now there are times when you get so many bleeps or so many calls that you just can't keep up, but just know that people will keep bleeping until they get a response from you. And by ignoring your bleeps and calls, people will just call you even more, and that would instantly put you in a bad mood. So just make sure you try and keep on top of them as much as possible. Now, of course, there are exceptions for that. You can delay answering your bleeps or calls if you're with a patient. But even during a ward round, if you notice you're getting the same bleep or same call from the same number, make sure you get back to them as soon as you can. You can always ask your consultant to excuse you for a few moments just to take a quick call, and you'll be right back with them. Now, if you keep getting frequent bleeps or calls from the same ward, you can ask them to come up with a list to collate all the jobs that they want you to do when you next visit that ward. Now, annoyingly, some people will bleep and run because of various reasons, or even put you on hold, even though they're the ones who called you. Just make sure you don't stay on the phone for more than a minute. It's not worth that time just sitting at the phone. If they want you, they will call you back. If for whatever reason you can't answer your bleep or pick up your calls, make sure you note down the numbers that have rung you so you can call them back as soon as you have a moment. Tip number 5. Always carry a small snack and water with you. The reason I say this is because when you're on call, you're busy, you never really know when your break will be. And being hungry, having a low blood sugars will cloud your judgment. What you can do is hide away in a non-clinical area and munch a little bit just to get your blood sugars up. And having a quick munch to replenish yourself won't take long. It will only take a couple of minutes out of your day. The reason I say to carry a bottle of water with you is because we're so bad at hydrating ourselves. Carrying the bottle around with you doesn't mean that you will definitely drink it, but if you don't carry it around with you, you definitely won't drink water. But obviously you need to make sure it follows you from ward to ward and make sure you don't lose it. It's also very helpful to find out where you can refill your bottle, because not all the taps are drinkable in the hospital, unfortunately. And for my people with dietary requirements and picky eaters like me, make sure you bring a meal with you for your shift. The hospital should provide hot food around the clock, but sometimes it might not be what you want to eat. Tip number 6. How to slay your post-take ward rounds. When you're presenting your cases to your consultant, make sure you always start with a concise, summarizing statement. Post-take ward rounds usually happen quite quick, and your consultant probably doesn't have the attention span before they start interrupting you anyway. And your job as the foundation doctor is to gather all the relevant info so that your consultant can make clinical decisions in a timely fashion. And important things to tell your consultants are the name of the patient, their age, any relevant medical and surgical history, any significant positive and negative signs and symptoms, your clinical impression, what you've done for the patient so far, and what you're waiting on. So just a quick example, pretend we're on the post-take ward round and I'm the foundation doctor presenting to my consultant. I've just seen an 80-year-old lady with known dementia. She's come in with acute worsening confusion for the last 3 days. Her bedside obs show this, her bloods are showing this, her chest x-ray shows this, and her urine sample is still pending. She has no skin changes, no signs of skin infection, and her mobility is not at her baseline. These are my examination findings, blah blah blah. I am therefore suspecting a UTI, and the family concerns are XYZ. That was just a quick example. Presenting on a ward round is like any other skills, you get slicker the more you practice it. So after the ward round, it's time for some jobs again. We need to make sure all the time critical jobs are done. If there are any non-urgent jobs that can be done by the day team, just make sure you hand it over to them appropriately. And that could be done by talking to the day team when they're back in work or put it on their handover lists. Tip number 7, prepare for handover, if time allows. If you have a few moments before the handover time, make sure you sit down with your team and check your patient lists again. Because 1, you can check whether you've completed all your tasks for the day, and 2, it's time for you to gather your thoughts and hand over any sick patients or any remaining urgent jobs to the night team. Make sure you only hand over jobs that need to be done overnight. If there are any jobs that can be done by the day team, hand it over to them the next day. This is also a good time for you to update your take list, because usually each member of the team would have messy pieces of paper with patient details on it. So it's good to collate all these lists to keep everything nice and tidy. So this is the list that you can use in the handover meeting to make sure no patient is missed, and it's much easier for everyone to follow. Tip number 8. How to structure your handover. This is actually very similar to presenting on a ward round. Always start with a summarizing statement. And same with any handovers, only include important information about the patients. Don't overload the night team. And I'm sure by now you would already know to include your patient name, hospital number, their date of birth and their location, their brief clinical details, any outstanding jobs, and make sure you highlight any sick patients and any patients that can potentially deteriorate quite quickly. And always make sure to thank the next team for taking your handovers, and thank your own team that you have been working with the whole day. And for my final tip, don't overstay your shift. There will be times where your on-call shift will finish a bit later and it might not be avoidable, but looking back, there were quite a few times where I stayed behind when I didn't need to. If I was managing my time well and prioritizing appropriately, I would have definitely finished on time. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you have a look at the video that I made on how to thrive on the wards as an F1 doctor. I go into a bit more detail on how to prioritize and manage your time well. And not overstaying past your shift time is especially helpful if you're back the next day for another shift. So make sure you have enough energy to go home, especially if you're commuting. If unfortunately you have to stay past your shift time, because it happens sometimes, make sure you discuss with your rota manager and see whether you can take some time off in your next shift or if you can claim some payment for the extra hours you've put in. And that's all my top tips on how to survive your on-call shift as an F1 doctor. In the coming weeks, I will be making more videos about the foundation program. If you found my video helpful, please like and subscribe, and comment down below for any questions you may have for me. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.